So we're going to launch Unreal Engine. All right, when you're in this menu, you don't have these options in the studio here, right? But you can just go into the blank one, keep everything off, make sure you name it correctly, right? So demo, right? And we're just gonna create one blank project. And we want it to be like really blank with no lighting, with nothing in there. And we're gonna just set up everything as we go along. Usually, some of you have modeled your idle different sizes. I know I have. So we're gonna first show you the basics here, right? So what you would get here is something that looks like this when you first open it up, right? So if you go to Window, Content Browser, which is here, you can see all the things in your project. First, we want to make a new folder here called Assets or Contents or whatever you like. And that's where we're going to put most of our things here, right? So I'm going to double click that. Quickly bring in my assets from week 4. So that's my model. Again, I don't want any textures. Do not search. Do not create a material. Don't import textures. And I'm just going to import it. And I'm going to go to textures and bring in all my textures. Right? I'm going to double click on my textures. Make sure they're not sRGB. Correct? And I'm going to make sure to save it. I have a habit of making changes and then closing, and then it'll ask me if I want to save. So if I make sure this is not sRGB and I close it, it says it'll just save it. So if you see a star here, that means these assets are not saved. So we're going to do a save all. File, save all. And so your project folder. So when you create an Unreal project, it'll go to your documents, Unreal projects, and the one we just created, this one to demo. These are all your files, right? Everything you need. You need this entire thing to move your project from one computer to another. And this is our level that we're working on right now. So we have this here. So what we're going to do is right click and make a material, right? So master material, idle, right? And I'm going to double click it, but instead of looking at a sphere, I want to look at my model. And it says, hey, you don't have a model, a mesh defined as your main mesh. So I'm just going to throw this guy in here and click on this brick here. But as you can see, my thing is very small. So we're just going to move it somewhere we can see. All right. First thing I'm going to do is take my texture, connect the RGB to base color, and it should update. My normal to normal. All right, I'm going to just move these out of the way a bit so I can bring my third map. And if you pay attention close to the name, it says lowest blend 1. That's the material I defined in Painter. And now it says occlusion, roughness, metallic. What that means is that here, the first one, red channel, is occlusion. So ambient occlusion it goes, right? G. The second was roughness, so that's G. That's gonna go into roughness. I can't see it, so I'm gonna have to move this around. G goes to roughness, and blue, the last one, goes to metallic. And there we have it. We have our textured model. So when I close this, it's gonna ask me, do you want to save this material, these changes you made? I say yes. I always say yes, right? So now our model here, idle, still doesn't have the texture on there, right? So we're gonna go here, double click it, and when it opens up, we're gonna click on the name here, and it's gonna show us all the materials we have in our scenes. So I'm gonna select this material as the default material for this object. So I can close this, and now you can see it has a texture on there, right? So I make a habit of save all the time, right? Now if I bring this in, there it is. Now I don't know what size this scene is, right? So for me, first thing I like to do is go in and bring some things from Quixel, right? So let's go and do that. You click on this. What's that? Yeah, something like that. So I just bring any assets to just understand the relation between the scale of the scene. So I'm gonna go to Quixel Bridge, right? Um, and then if you have logged in to this, you'll be right there. So log in with the same account you log into your Unreal Engine. So if I go to models here, you can see I've got a choice of many different things here, right? There is one here, um, let's say castle ruins, right? If we roll down, we've got materials, we've got little assets to dress the scene, we've got so many different things here, right? So I'm gonna bring this in. I just click download, and it downloads it onto my computer, but not to my project folder. The moment I press add, it gets added to my scene and in my project folder. So before I bring it to the scene, it's right here, right? And it's all in mega scans and 3D assets. If you bring in surfaces, it's in surfaces and different things. So let's bring in this thing, and we know that that pillar is that size, right? So now we got a rough idea of how we want our um, model to be. For some reason, I'm not seeing my mouse. So you have to excuse me. Press this, like this. So. All right. Yep, still not seeing my mouse. So I'm gonna be playing with stuff on this side. So now I'm gonna move it up. There we go. And move it onto this, scale it, and we have something. Now in Unreal Engine, there's a lot of cool things we can do. First, let's rotate this towards the sun. And sometimes when you see this snapping happening, it moves by like 10 degrees. You can turn off these blue snapping boxes, right? So if I turn that off, now it's gonna turn very smoothly, right? All right. So now if we go to Quixel Bridge again and go to that same one, let's say, there's a lot of things here, you know, take time in the workshop to explore them all. We can bring in some decals, right? Let's go to the top one, decals. And just for demonstration purposes, I'm just gonna bring this in because it's so bright and obvious. And also I want to bring in uh, this thing here. Yeah. So when it's done downloading, you can add it. And which one, if you don't know which one you downloaded already, you can go to this and it shows you all the assets you've already um, downloaded. So I'm just gonna add these into my project, and here they are. So if I go to decals, there's decals. So decals are cool because you can actually add them to your models. Like look at this. I can just come in here and add this, and it'll also affect all the objects around it. So you see this green box, whatever is in that green box will be affected by this decal. So if we make it really small, too small, lost my mouse again. There we go. Oh, we can put it anywhere, even on this guy. Yeah, for some reason I'm not able to see my mouse. So let's just delete that and try another one. I like these rocks here. They add quite a bit of detail. And I just want to add it to the floor. So you get some texture stretching there. I can just rotate it a bit. Right? So we can add details like this. So we've brought in a model, we've brought in some dirt here, and that's all good. So we can actually bring a lot more stuff in and really dress up the environment here. So I've got these, I'm gonna add them to the project. And I wanna bring a texture as well. So these are like surfaces, like that one. Gonna bring that in. And I'll close this for now. So first of all, surfaces. Let's say this plane that you have. If you don't have this plane, right? This plane here, this floor, we can just delete it, right? And we want to create a floor. We go here. We can create it here with shapes, or you can go to place actor panel. So it gives you this panel full of nice pictured things here. So I can just drag and drop one here and make it really big, smaller, bigger on this side, move it down. Great. I don't want snapping anymore. There we go. So ground, I want this texture on there. Boom. Now you can see it stretches. You can come here under details and general, you know, before you add it, you can make it as big as you want. So for me, I'd like to go into the mega scans, 3D assets. Um, these ones break up the environment a bit. So I'm just going to add some of these. You can make them bigger or smaller, push them in so that they look different. What is that? You could, but you don't have to because, we wanted to show you how to kit bash using Megascans. So these are the models they provide, so you can really use them to your advantage.
Or you might use a model in order to create some like
Yeah, for your environment, yeah. So you see, I'm just, you know, moving it in different directions, giving different orientations to just make an environment look less 3D. And sometimes when you stand here, you don't see all that, right? So here we are. We've created that much. Now, inside a cave, usually there is some big pieces of rocks. So let's go bring those in. So I've already downloaded some. I'm gonna bring this.
on regardless of machines, or is this section that what you downloaded from the ship?
This is what I've downloaded. You can download heaps of stuff here, and they're all free.
What if you have assets and you create the computer?
What assets? Your own
If I
assets?
downloaded assets
Yeah.
on the computer,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see the history of what I downloaded on the computer.
Um, you don't need to because it's all free. It's all there, right? So whatever you download is now in your project folder. So all the content, you see, is all here. Mega scans, decals, all that we added are in files here, right? So when you move these project folders, you move this whole project folder to demo as I have here, right? You don't move like one file at a time, you just move the whole folder and they're all there in your scene. So here we go to a massive slab here. These are really giant. So I'm just gonna give myself a backdrop over here. Again, I hold Alt, rotate it a bit, change the size, you know, and it'll start to look different. Again, duplicate, make it real big, rotate it, and move it out. So you can get a lot of variation this way, you know. Now, you might be wondering, how do we put plants and foliage and things like that in there, right? Same thing. We'll go to our Quixel bridge. You can search for foliage and, you know, like plants, and you get a lot of, you know, 3D plants. Lots. You can download a lot of. I've already downloaded a few here. I'm gonna add this to my project, and I can go back here in, I'm in 3D plants tool project. I can bring them one by one like this and put them there, or I can go in and paint them on. So how I would do that, I would go to my selection mode, foliage, and this panel here changes. And it helps if you have a bigger screen. I'm just gonna move this to the side here and make this a bit bigger. So it already knows that I have these plants. So I'm just gonna make sure that I tick them. Yeah, I'm going to explain this. So you can select all of these, tick them. So these are all the plants that have been selected. And this round thing is my brush, right? So you can make the brush smaller. bit smaller here, and you can start to just paint them on. And it'll just put a heap of these plants on there, right? So that's how you would do variations. Then you would create another brush, remove these, add different types of plants. So now that we have a certain environment inside the cave, we need to create the cave itself, right? I'm just going to move this back down here. There we go. And show you how we create objects inside Unreal. So as you saw, I've already created one of these. This is just a static object, right? But if you move to this geometry panel, you get the same things, but they're named differently. So how does this work? So if I bring a box out here, right, you'll see it has this texture on it. And the cool thing about this geometry is that they're like kind of a modeling tool here. So let's make a big one here, right? And move it, move it. So now it's like totally encompassing all the work we just did, right? Now we want to put a hole in there on the top for the light to come through, right? So make a cylinder and make it bigger, a bit bigger. And the trick is you come down to general here in details, and there's an option here, brush type. It's additive right now. It adds to the model. We want it to be subtractive. So it like cuts a hole into the other object. Usually these objects are box brush, cylinder brush, as you can see on the side here. But no matter how much we cut into it, we're not gonna get anywhere, right? Because it's a solid mesh. So we're just creating a hole. So we're gonna make inside of this box empty. How we do that is I just copy this by holding Alt, right? Just moving it up a bit, right? And now I'm gonna make it smaller, right? But by just making it small, it's not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna make it subtractive. Now if I go to the box, you see we have this thin wall now, right? So now we have a sky hole on the top, all right? So let's say now we want the light beam to come down and touch our idol. So one thing you can do, you can select all of these and right click and, oh, sorry, right click all of them and go to world settings, selected game mode, all. Yep. So when you select all of these brush meshes, you can create a static mesh. So it just combines it, delete history like that in Maya and makes it a static mesh. But since we haven't finished with it, I'm just gonna leave it like that, okay? Now, let's go and clean this scene up a bit because there's a lot of objects here and I don't want to see all of it like that, right? So I can create folders here and call it like meshes, you know, and just put them all under there. Maybe the cube inside meshes, the idol's head, you know, all these things that we brought in. It can be under meshes, all of these things, meshes. So it's kind of like clean. We can see our things here. I can create another one. Yep, it made it on. And this one for now. Select all my lighting things and just create another folder. Call it lighting. So, you know, I can just delete all this to start from fresh. So if I delete these things, my scene is going to be very dark and I'm not going to be seeing anything, right? And in that case, I'm just going to go, instead of lit mode, I'm going to go to unlit. So I'm just going to see the diffuse and things like that. So we can either come here and start creating directional lights and all this stuff. But Unreal Engine 5 works a bit differently, right? You can do that if you want to, but there's an easier way. So if I go to Window and Environmental Light Mixer, I can open up this menu down here. So let me just combine it with this. There we go. So here you'll see it's empty because we haven't created any light. So let's create an atmospheric light first, right? The moment we do that, settings are going to come down here. I like to go to advanced, right? So now I can go to lit and kind of look at the sky. So the sky is dark because we don't have a sky map, but we do have some light, right? So in Unreal Engine, there's gizmos for everything. So I'm just gonna move the gizmo up here so I can see it clearly. And I can kind of rotate this until I get my skylight coming through that hole. And somehow that it just kind of shines on my model. Now the cool thing is I still didn't convert my mesh into a static mesh. So I can go to my cylinder and just resize that to make it smaller, right? So that I get a smaller beam of light. I can like turn it to get a different shape of beam of light, you know, like whatever. So going back to my light here, it's gonna be very annoying to select. There we go. I can put it right here. So now there is light, but it's not hitting anything to create like a beam of light, you know, like a God ray. So we're gonna create a height fog. So if we go down, there's a volumetric fog. We're gonna turn that on. All right, we're gonna make it as foggy as possible. And we're gonna go down here and make this less. So if you have a lot of fog, there's so much fog in the background, we're just gonna make that a bit less. And we're gonna make the fog come out. There we go. So now when we look towards the light, we can see the fog, right? So you're gonna have to play with these settings to kind of get the fog to like really reach down. You can do that, yeah, definitely, right? So if we go out and select our things and just bring them all down, will help somewhat. But it's always a matter of just playing with the settings. Sometimes it helps me even if I create the fog a bit harder and give it more here, make this a bit more pronounced. That's this way. You know, somewhat you can get something like that, right? But now the whole scene is really dark. You just get that. I mean, it looks a lot more pronounced here on my screen. So I'm gonna max it out so you guys can see it too. So yeah, here we go. So we got some sort of beam of light here. And that's what I have. Now I'm gonna create you know, a sky atmosphere. So when I look out, You see the light became a bit more yellow. You can't see it on the projector screen, but it gives it more of a sunset quality or sunrise or whatever. So you can definitely have that. You can also create a skylight, right? Now the skylight will give us a lot more light within our scene. But the problem with these is that we now have to control more things, right? So create these things when you need it. Don't just create it because they're there, but create it because you need it. So if I go to this skylight now, and I could only see my details here, I can lower the intensity. There. So lower the intensity and I'll have less. So between 0 and 1, right? So let's put 0.5. Yeah, that's good. Maybe 0.2. Something like that. So we have some light in there, but not too much. Even 1, that we can see some of the details there, but we can still see our idol. I mean, it looks so different on the projector, so I'm gonna bring that up so you guys can see it. There you go. Now you can see some of the rocks there and such. You can even like go back, like you see, like my scene is very bare, right? It wouldn't be just like flat and nothing. It would have kind of like, if I go to all, and I'm just gonna hide this because I have no. What is that? Yeah, I wanted to show you that next week, but I'll show you now as well, just so that we have an idea of what we're gonna do. So let's just go to assets. This one, mega scan, 3D assets. Now we have, oh, that's huge rock. Yep. So we have some rocks here. We can move it around the scene like that. Just to kind of give some debris in the scene. So let's say we're happy with that and we want to create a camera, right? So very easy here. You come create a camera, cinematic, actor camera, and we'll see it. We can look through it by pressing here and looking through our camera. So here's our camera. So I'm just going to make one camera that just slowly goes forward, right, from here to here. So let's create that. First thing we want to do, we've got our camera in, we've got everything set up. What we're going to do is go here and add a level sequencer, a level sequence, right? We do that, it says, where do you want to save this, right? So we're going to call this dolly on idle, right? Now we get all this animation type controls down here, right? But there's no track, right? So we're going to grab our camera and just chuck it in here, right? Now we got a timeline. We've got like a thumbnail, what we can see in that timeline. We can just move these out of the way. I could select it, there you go, to kind of see our model. So the camera has a lot of properties. It has aperture, focal length. You can do a lot of cool things with it. So what we need to do is just need to move it forward. So I'm just going to keyframe the transforms here and go to the last frame. Maybe 165 is not what you want. Maybe you want 250 frames, right? But you also want to see 250 frames, so you go and look at the max frames, right? Then you We expand it to that and go all the way to the end. And now we're going to go forward to something like this. And then we're going to keyframe the transform, right? Just like animating any camera in any 3D software. So now we've got this very cool dolly here. But as you can see, the head is now out of focus, right? So if you look at the camera here and go into its focus settings, you see it's manual focus, right? So here from manual, we can select it to tracking, right? So when we click tracking, there's tracking options now available for us. So first, I want to make sure that we want to focus here, right? And how do we know if it's focusing? If we just show the debug wall. This pink wall is basically where our focus is, right? And I want to make sure to select the head to track. So now it's going to look for that material and kind of like just track it throughout the animation. So as the camera even gets close, it's always tracking that thing. So I don't like to see the focus debug all the time. I'm just going to turn it off. So you might be wondering now, oh, so how do we render a movie from this, right? First thing you gotta make sure is to go to Window and, Edit Plugins, right? And we'll search Movie, right? So Movie Render Queue plugin should be installed. Now on these computers is a bit different. You have an AVI exporter, which is good enough, right? So just make sure this Movie Render Queue has a tick on there. Okay, and now we want to render, and just like that, we're click here, and we got configuration. So let's configure it. Now it's rendering a JPEG sequence. We don't want that, right? So let's add a setting for something else. Let's say Apple ProRes video, right? So Apple ProRes has a lot of settings. I like the 422 because it's small enough to be able to be played back on a local machine. And that's all I need. I accept it. I can save the file in different places in the project, but I'll just leave it in the default position. And I say render local. So it's rendering on this computer. So it's going to do a little light mixing. It's going to go in there and render. So now we rendered. Where is the file right now, right? So you would go again to your project folder, saved, movie renders, and it's right here. So you open file, and you play it. There you have it. That's how you basically do production in Unreal Engine. It's very easy, very fast renders, and you can get a lot of things done this way. So I want you to take the time in workshops to kind of play around with the environment. Make sure you work with your lighting by stages. Add an object, see how it affects the scene. Add a light, see how it affects the scene. One by one. Don't keep adding and then you're like lost. You don't know what's affecting what. Okay? So work in stages. Bring your idle in. Make it look good. Make it how you want. You can do many different camera animations. That's up to you. All right? And make sure you always go File, Save All. And it's all saved. Okay?